welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us. Sticking to the basketball theme, you know, I respect anybody that makes it to the NBA, that gets paid to play a sport, in this case, professional basketball. The guy we have with us in studio right now, he's got a new book that just came out. It's called The New Alpha Male. He's the first ever NBA basketball player that was legally deaf. And as I said, his book just came out. His story is incredible. Lance Allred joining us in studio. Lance, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's I enjoyed a little commercial chat, and once that we had that conversation, I knew I was in good company. So thanks for having me.
So the first question people will ask is, wait a second, you're deaf. Mm-hmm. How are you able to hear me? How are you able to talk? Can you explain that to the listeners?
Yeah. So thank God for technology. Digital age is a wonderful age to be 80% hearing loss. But I was in speech therapy till I was 15, but most of the time I'm still just reading lips.
Wow.
So when studios want me to call in on the phone, it's like, well, if you can Zoom or Skype so I can lip read, right, that's really helpful. And so learning how to just lip read, being in speech therapy till I was 15, and learning how to take the context of a conversation and figure out what we're talking about. And also dialect helps. But, you know, you take the vowel shifts and the tones, A, E, I, O, U, and you just piece them together and you just figure it out over the years.
A big part of sports and a big part of basketball is what you hear. The officials blowing a whistle, for example, a coach calling out a play, a teammate telling you something, calling out a screen. A big part of defense is communication. So let's go back to when you were younger. When did you first start to pick up a basketball? When did you start learning the game?
Well, I picked up a basketball at the age of 14 after my family had broken away from a polygamist cult.
Oh, my God.
So as far as deaf polygamous kids making the NBA, I sort of cornered the market. That's mine.
Wow.
And so I grew that year in 8th grade. We went into hiding. My father blew the whistle on child abuse and money laundering for the Vegas mob. And we had to go into hiding. And I lost all my cousins who had been my best friends. And so I grew that year in my new school from 5'10" to 6'4".
Well, hold on a second. Your father was the whistleblower for illegal activity in the mob in Vegas. When? In the 70s, 80s?
1994. 93, 94.
So your father was a member of the mob?
No, well, he was with this religious group, and he found out that other of our quote-unquote apostles were actually funneling money, doing fronts for the mob.
So he speaks to the FBI, and he's the whistleblower, and you're living in hiding because of that?
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're a kid growing up that can't hear anything.
Yeah, so it was a wacky life, wacky story. But these experiences and all my travels around the world playing basketball on all the continents, that's what allows me to do what I do now as a corporate consultant, keynote speaker.
Yes, and I want to talk to you about that. So you pick up a basketball. Yeah. You're a high school kid. You're obviously extremely tall. You're in good shape.
Let's talk about the transition. Learning how to play basketball is very difficult. As you talked about the hearing, I got clocked on screens so many times. I can't even begin to tell you.
I bet.
I was concussed more than I want to admit. But you choose to get back up every time. There's no magic wand. There's no time hacks or cheat sheets or podcasts out there. No essential oils that make it easy for you to just get back up every time because you choose to.
How good of a high school basketball player were you? What were you averaging junior, senior year?
My senior year, I was a Gatorade Player of the Year for the state of Utah.
Wow. So you were really good.
I was a late bloomer, though.
Center?
Yeah, center. And so to answer your question about defense, luckily as the center, it was my job to have my back underneath the hoop to develop my peripheral vision to see everything happening. And it was my job to communicate. So there it was my job. The deaf kid, I had to be the one most vocal, talking to people, telling them pick right, pick left, high screen, back screen. I had to be the one communicating. So that's how I learned to make myself valuable.
How do you know when the ref blows the whistle?
You watch other people stop.
Wow. So you always have to keep going. You can't assume anything.
You can't assume anything. So you learn to keep your head on a swivel. And so it taught me to play basketball like a game of chess. You develop the strong peripheral vision, and you play it with a soft focus. You don't ever hard focus on anything, but soft focus, like you let your eyes go lazy when you see the 3D posters. That's how I had to learn how to play basketball. And that you don't aim your shots, you soft focus, and you trust your intuition. Wow. And so a lot of it, my message is trusting your body. We spend so much time in our heads, especially in the stat-driven age, where we have all these CEOs that love to go to the front row seats at the sporting arenas and say, hey, way to make that great instinctive play. But then the next day they show up to work and they hamstring their employees and say, well, what do the stats say? Failing to learn the lesson what the athlete is teaching, that stats inform us, but they don't drive us. that you still have to go out there and play ball. You have to be willing to make mistakes. You have to be willing to take risks. And you have to be willing to. That's what it was. But everyone tries to, curtail any risk at all.
Of course. So you're finishing high school. You're the best player in the state your senior year, which is an unbelievable accomplishment. What was it like for you and your family when you get that phone call, that first call where you realize you got a college scholarship? I'm not even getting to the NBA yet.
Yeah.
A college scholarship, and I know maybe it wasn't a big deal to you at that time.
Oh, it was.
But for somebody that can't hear, to get a college scholarship to play basketball is an unbelievable accomplishment. What was that like for you and your family?
It was 3 years of hard work of me waking up every morning at 5 a.m. No one had to wake me up. It was my choice. And I slept with the old alarm clock on my chest because I don't sleep with my hearing aids in. And it would wake me up, and I'd bike through rain, sleet, or snow to practice with my high school coach for 3 straight years. And he didn't receive an extra penny for that. But he met me every day before school. And we worked, and we worked, and we worked. Wow. It was hard work.
So all that hard work pays off. You obviously have a very successful college career. Were you drafted?
No. So at Weber State, my senior year, I led the nation in rebounding.
Did you really?
Almost.
So you had a knack.
So I had a knack for rebounding. Again, watching the ball, timing it. But I lost in the conference tournament championship game to Montana at Weber State. I led the nation at that time at 12.0. But Andrew Bogut and Paul Millsap, both brilliant players, had massive rebounding games in the NCAA tournament, passed me at the 12.1. So I went from number 1 to number 3. I did not get drafted because, again, it was, he's from Weber State. This is before Damian Lillard came and gave us some love. And so I had to go play overseas, over in Turkey, and the team there wasn't
very
paying.
Physical, right? Very physical brand of basketball.
Physical brand of basketball, very slow, smash mouth, not a lot of finesse or creativity. It's just who can just power down. But I was taught to be more of a face-up post player. And again, with my hearing loss, my coach taught me, don't fight fire with fire. Play it like a game of chess. You don't ever go head on. You see what their strengths are. If he's too strong, face them up. Use your speed to go around him.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Lance Allred, the first deaf NBA basketball player. His new book is out called The New Alpha Male. Okay, so you play in Europe, which I would imagine made you a better player and a more physical basketball player. Explain to me that first call you got. I don't know if it was a 10-day contract or you're on a summer league. That first call, who was it from giving you an opportunity to possibly be an NBA player?
It was actually, so I went. The first year in Europe was really frustrating. I actually injured my knee. The team there said it was a pre-existing condition. So I went home, had to pay for my own knee surgery, broke in debt, in the red, and I got a call to go play for the Idaho Stampede, minor league team for the Utah Jazz and NBA Development League. And I only got that job at the time to be the token media guy at the end of the bench, right? Let's go send the deaf guy to do all of our communication work. But here's a good point. I could have cut off my nose to spite my face and said, I'm above all this. Or I said, fine, I'm going to learn how to do radio and TV interviews and public speaking that will allow me to transition out of basketball and make more money than I ever did as a basketball player. But I started at the end of the team, at the end of the bench, and within 1 week, mid-season, starting center broke his legs, power forward got bought out, ironically, the same team in Turkey that hadn't honored my contract, so he's gone. And so by default, I became the starting center. In my first game on the road in Bismarck, North Dakota, I gave him 30 and 10.
Whoa.
And
oh my God.
Everyone's like, where did this deaf dude come from? But little by little, he kept pounding and plugging away. But you know the answer, but what's the average age of an NBA rookie?
I would imagine the average age today would be somewhere around 21.
Yeah, 21.
21. I was 27 when I made the NBA.
Wow. So you're already kind of a journeyman.
Journeyman, 7 years of heartbreak and disappointment, where most of my peers made it 7 years earlier, but choosing to get up every time I got knocked down because it was my choice.
So you get the call up to the Utah Jazz?
No, the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron.
You played with LeBron?
Yeah.
So what was that like? So the years you played with LeBron, how many years were you on Cleveland?
I was with Cleveland for the 2008 season, and then for the Pacers for a bit in 2010.
So was this the Varejao and those guys?
Yeah.
So you were in the NBA Finals?
We lost to the Boston Celtics in Game 7 that year.
Was that okay? So was that the game where he rips off his jersey as he's walking out through the tunnel?
No. This is the year Boston won it.
Okay, so you get the call up, and you get an opportunity to play for the Cleveland Cavaliers. who's the first phone call you make? Do you call your family? I mean, who do you call? This is a huge deal, obviously. If it's not a big deal enough that you're, the high school player of the year, then you get a college scholarship and you're one of the best rebounders in college basketball. You play professional ball in Europe, making a decent salary, I would imagine.
If they paid me.
Yeah, right. But then you're called up to play with arguably one of the best players to ever play the game.
Yes.
LeBron James. Mm-hmm. What was that first day like for you?
Well, to answer your question, I called my dad. He's the first person I spoke to. I love my father. He taught me integrity in that are you the same person in every room that you walk into? And so I called him. And then I I met the team in Washington to play the Washington Wizards. And I remember I walked in, I had my old D-League shoes on. And LeBron looks at me and says, "Hey, yo, what size shoes are those, dog?" I'm like, 15. He goes, "Yeah, here, take a pair of mine." Granted, he had a whole other locker designated for shoes, but he gave me a pair.
So that's the first thing he says to you.
Not a surprise at all.
Do the players know, when you walk into that locker room, meet the players for the first time, do they know that you're legally deaf? Did they know your story?
Some did, some didn't. But I can tell you this, I was surprised about how welcoming a lot of them were, because the players who last the longest in the NBA are those that have the humility to acknowledge that a lot of things had to go their way.
Of course.
Timing, everything, right place at the right time, who
Absolutely.
you know. And they knew that for me to come through the back door, so to speak.
They respected you.
They respected me because they know I didn't have a lot of buzz or hype to go my way.
What is it like in a practice with LeBron James?
Oh, God. Stuff I had to do and guard him. I mean, this kid would do
You guarded LeBron in practice.
Oh, yeah. And he would just do things that no one would ever be able to see in his prime. And all you can do is pat him on the ass and say, "God bless you."
Do you guys still talk?
Oh, yeah. We keep up every now and then. Whenever we see each other, we hug and And what I'm most proud of LeBron is that this is a guy from his background that I can't spread too much gossip, but with no father figure. His mother was not very present growing up as a kid. Coming out of high school with all that money and fame thrown his way, he's done far better than I ever would have.
That's a good point you make, because I'll be honest with you, I was more of a Kobe guy growing up. You played against Kobe too, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, never actually guarded him, but yeah, sat and watched.
Any conversations you've ever had with Kobe?
Kobe was only, 3 years older than me?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story about Kobe. When I was in the minor leagues, we'd played the LA Defenders in the Staples before the Lakers came on. Mm-hmm. And when we were walking in the tunnel after the game, Kobe acknowledged every single one of us.
That's
he looked
incredible.
us in the eye and said, "Hey, fellas, good job." This is a guy who's at the top of the world, who had every right to be pretentious and stuffy.
And wasn't.
Was not. And Kobe was polarizing for a lot of reasons. Now, sure, I didn't always agree with his basketball theology, because we knew Kobe had high basketball IQ, and he was so intelligent that he would choose to take bad shots because it's like, "I'm Kobe. I'm going to do it." And you're like, "I don't know if that was the best shot you could have taken, buddy, but hey, you're Kobe, okay?" But what I loved about Kobe was how cerebral he was as a human being, off the court, artistically, expressively. I was that guy. I ever since I was a kid, my parents encouraged me to read and write as a form of communication. So writing has always been my catharsis. I've done that since I've been a young kid. And so being able to come off the court and express yourself in other ways, that's what I loved about Kobe, but that's also what threatened him, what made him threatening to other players, because they knew he was so intelligent.
Sure.
That he wasn't this guy that's going to go home and play NBA Live after practice.
Right.
And a lot of
Hard
other
work,
players
effort.
a lot of players are threatened just by how smart he was. And that's where I really connected with him, because a lot of people had judged me as being arrogant just because I see the world in a different way.
There are a lot of people that did not want to play with Kobe Bryant because of that work ethic. Some even use the term, it was hell to play with Kobe Bryant. You strike me as a guy, it would be the opposite, that you would have loved that challenge to play with Kobe. Am I right?
I would have loved it.
Yeah, because of everything that you've gone through in your life. So you're playing with LeBron James, you're playing in the league, you're making a good salary, you finally made it, so to speak. Let's talk a little bit about life now after basketball. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. I know you have this new book out called The New Alpha Male. It just came out today, and I know you're a motivational speaker, and by the things you're saying and some of the stories you're telling me now, that does not surprise me one bit. It's fascinating, your stories and what you've been through in your life. Talk to me about now life after basketball and why you've decided to write this book.
Great question. So 5 years ago, I was going through a divorce, and that's why I retired from basketball. I didn't want to be away from my son. And, you can save up all the money you want, but, when you go through a divorce, kiss it all goodbye. And there I was transitioning, figuring out, what am I going to do? All right, fine. Since my days with the Cavaliers, schools always keep asking me to come speak to their kids. And I hear there's a rumor that you can get paid to speak, right? So little by little, started asking, hey, $500, whatever. And now, after 5 years of really grinding away, and TEDx Talk really helped me, called What is Your Polygamy? Really helped me find these avenues where I now get to go all across the country and the world, frankly, to speak and work with corporations, especially with corporations that are, again, saying all the right things for PR and political purposes. And anyone can talk about leadership because they heard about Harvard studies and whatnot, but what is real leadership is perseverance. The difference between stubbornness and perseverance. Stubbornness is the inability to adapt. Perseverance is the ability to adapt. And we have so many coaches and CEOs now, like lamenting, saying, oh, the world's gone soft. I can't verbally abuse my employees or players anymore. When I say, you know what is soft? The inability to adapt. You can still be in integrity who you are, the same person you walk into, but like as a basketball player, in the third quarter, when the refs decide at halftime they're going to start calling the game differently,
You have to adapt.
you have to adapt.
Do you feel like there are a lot of kids, teenagers, that don't have that type of awareness, that have this sense of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Grit?
They don't have the grit, and they just have a sense of, that they're just too good, and they're not going to listen to people. Because I talk to a lot of coaches today, and they say they don't want to coach anymore because these kids just don't want to listen, and they have this sense of, I'm too good for you.
The entitlement thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the curse of social media. And also, but a lot of it too, that entitlement usually is a mask for shame or feeling of inadequacy. And so you have a lot of kids growing up in the social media age where they see all of these markers, these fluffed up stats of how many followers and likes you have. Somehow they're an indicator or reference of your value to the world.
Right.
And so you have all these kids growing up, frankly, very insecure. And yet they're taught that they have to be perfect, so they can't handle any feedback because any feedback means they're less than perfect.
Social media definitely creates unrealistic expectations.
There's no question. I have to go back to this polygamist compound because to every normal, everyday person, they cannot relate, right? How did you end up being the person you are today? I mean, I would imagine growing up on a polygamous compound, that has to affect you for the rest of your life. You talked to me about how you're a good father, a good family man. People, the average everyday person just can't relate to that. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So watch my TEDx talk tonight. What is your polygamy when you get home? Because we hear a lot of horror stories about what happens for the women, but you don't ever really hear about what it's like for the men or the boys growing up in polygamy. Where you see around you that your status as a man, an alpha, is dependent on how many wives you had. So more wives meant more blessings from God, meant more money, meant more power. So you have this vicious internal narrative that becomes so deeply embedded in your subconscious that it sabotages you in your adult life. And so a lot of what the new alpha male is and what is your polygamy is learning how to myself go through the grieving cycle of a lost marriage, learning how to look at myself and ask myself tough questions. The culture I came from, it really dictates a lot of my perception of the world. Our culture is our biggest blind spot. And playing in all these cultures around the world, everyone and their mother thinks their values are the best values. And so if they're saying that, then it's a wash. And becoming authentic and vulnerable with yourself is having the self-actualization of saying, you know what? Those old metrics that said I was a man, an alpha, they mean nothing to me. I'm going to be brave enough to dictate for myself what is my standard of success. And so it's a hard thing to do, especially when people are hearing about, in this day and age, all the things men are doing wrong. We're not getting a lot of coping skills saying is, okay, how can we actually figure out and do this right and be more, because everyone says they want intimacy, but just because women may be better at expressing their emotions does not necessarily give them the monopoly on communication.
From what you can remember, the alpha of the polygamous cult that you had to escape, how many wives did that particular person have?
Well, my grandfather, who founded the Allred group, or the AUB, he was assassinated 4 years before I was born. But he had 7 wives, but 48 kids. And my father was one of 48. So I was one of 400 grandkids.
Jesus.
But, you have people with 3. You had some with like 13, 14, right? But there's a lot of it. Okay, yes, just like every corporation, you do have the sociopaths rising up to the top.
Did you ever meet Warren Jeffs?
Warren Jeffs and the Jeffs and the Allreds have history. They were together in the 1940s, but my grandfather Rulin and Warren Jeffs' father Rulin, there were two Rulins. They split in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Jeffs and the Allreds do have history together.
Wow, that's crazy.
Are you related to Gloria Allred?
Gloria Allred, I think some like fourth or fifth cousin.
She's got a lot of money. She's got a lot of money. All right, let's go to some fun subjects here. Since you did play with LeBron James, do you think the Lakers get it done this year? Do you think they win it all in the name of Kobe Bryant? Do you think Anthony Davis, LeBron James, they get it done and they beat the Clippers ultimately and win the championship?
I think they'll. I would say the Lakers are a good bet to win it. If I had the gun to my head, throw a bet down. I'm not really a betting man, but if I had to, I would definitely say the Lakers. I think the Clippers are better suited for like ISO, make a big play at the end, playoff basketball.
Yeah.
But if the Lakers don't fall behind in a game, but they just kind of keep their rhythm, they have so many tools and they're so well blended. And LeBron is here's why he's MVP. LeBron can go to any team in the NBA, any team. I don't care if it's the Phoenix Suns, and he can make them a title contender. Mm-hmm. No other player can do that.
You don't think Giannis can do that?
No.
Really?
No. You can't make – he's good doing it. He's picking up the LeBron things, but I don't think he's there yet. Because LeBron, as we know, he led the league in hockey assists for how many years in a row? He's the guy that he just breaks everything down. But his passing prowess is just so untapped. And he can take over a game when he needs to. Giannis is close. I'll give you that. He is the closest in comparison to be able to do that.
But an example is the Cleveland teams you played on, with all due respect. There wasn't a wealth of talent when Verjao and those guys are your second or third option.
Exactly.
I think that was his best accomplishment as an NBA player. When he made the NBA Finals with that Cleveland Cavaliers team that in most circumstances without LeBron wouldn't even been a playoff team, let alone a championship team. To me, that's incredible.
And who was at point guard? Mo Williams?
Mo Williams.
It was Daniel Gibson and Delonte West.
Delonte. What do you make of Delonte now?
I love him. I was able to track down his mom and get in touch with them after the whole video thing surfaced.
Yeah, he's been having rough times.
And he was one of the kindest to me.
Just mental illness, right?
Just mental illness.
So sad.
It really is sad, but he gave me nothing but kindness when I showed up.
I have to ask you this. There were rumors circulating.
Yeah,
you know what I'm going to ask, right? That Delonte West was sleeping with LeBron James' mom. Is that true?
I haven't had a first-hand confirmation, but from everybody that I know, it was all kind of a unspoken yes.
That's a difficult situation. So. Are there any deaf professional athletes that you looked up to growing up? Are there any deaf NBA players? Anybody that you looked up to, you said, wow, no? Nobody out there really?
I didn't have anyone to blaze a trail for me. So,
are there any players in the NBA today that you know of that are really?
There's Derek Coleman, the running back for the Seattle Seahawks a couple of years back, but he was a little after me. But yeah, no.
You just made your own trail, and you didn't really have anybody to say, I want to be like that person? Or how about just basketball players in general?
Well, the thing is, with the hearing loss, again, I learned to watch and mimic people, watch their body language. So it was a blend of Tim Duncan, Brad Miller, even Karl Malone, but just learning to figure out what are things they are doing, but most importantly, what aren't people doing. What allowed me to play for 10 years, I wasn't the most athletic guy. I wasn't like I was out there dunking on fools.
Right.
I was just learning to score in gaps.
Right.
Learning to score more with my left hand than my right hand, even though I'm right-handed. And so where Tim Duncan had a weakness, he had no left hand. And so just learning to say, okay, well, how can I be valuable? What aren't they doing? Chris Kaman was someone I really admired because he was left and right handed.
Long career.
Yeah.
Long career in the NBA for the Clippers for a while, sure. So we only have about a minute here left. I want to give you an opportunity to give out the information about your book. It sounds like a great read. I can't wait to buy the book. So tell me a little bit about the book. We got about a minute here. Where can you find it? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at Lance Allred 41 or 41.com. Handle and website, but also the book, The New Alpha Male, How to Win the Game When the Rules Are Changing. It's a lot of sports experiences and stories to help men learn to actually go inward and be more heart-centered, masculine and feminine. Masculine is shooting the ball, passing is feminine, right? If you're always masculine, shooting the ball, you're going to get benched. If you're always passing it too much, you're going to get benched. It's learning to be heart-centered, masculine, and feminine, rather than we live in a world where people are trying to overcorrect, throwing temper tantrums against the Me Too movement, trying to double down on the old false bravado. Anyone can puff their chest. That's not hard to do. But can you actually be vulnerable and authentic and have a real intimate conversation? Say, hey, I see you're in pain, and you're inflicting pain because you're in pain.
Right.
Let's have a conversation about that. I'm here with you. That's real conversations that men need to be having. And frankly, women need to understand that we grew up in the Cold War era that taught us the most trophies, the most nuclear weapons meant we were alpha. So women learning how to be vulnerable. So the new Alpha Male, you can get it at Amazon, Audible, Barnes & Noble, and the bookstores everywhere. It's nationwide as of today. So guys, thank you so much for letting me come in.
Well, I can see why you're a motivational speaker. Your story is certainly inspirational. Glad to see you're doing great. And thank you so much for coming in studio and being able to read my lips, by the way. That is very impressive as well. Thank you so much for being here. Lance Allred, really inspirational story. Really appreciate it. All right, guys, Sean Hannity coming up next.